Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Aniagolu. Now, less than 2 decades ago, Highlife was considered to be old people's music, but now there's a turnaround and young people appear to be at the forefront of its re-emergence in major urban centers like Lagos. My music guests today are the Cavemen, who've taken vintage Highlife from the West African rhythms of the 50s and 60s and repositioned it in the 21st century for a new generation. A sort of progression of Highlife taken a few notches higher than what it was in the pre- and post-independence era. It's the metamorphosis of a brilliant art form that pays homage to this country's truly great iconic artists, from Victor Laya, Bobby Benson, Victor Owaifo and Rex Lawson to Celestine Uku, Osita Osadebe, Sonny Ade and Nico Mbaga, to mention a few. Well, in a moment, we'll talk with the Cavemen themselves and get a sense of how they've come to redefine Highlife music. But first, here's a taste of their new, reinvented tropical Highlife.
Make you dance the dance where you know how to dance. Make you dance the dance where you know how to dance. Make you dance the dance where you know how to dance. Make you dance to our music. Again, make it us to our music. The man is there again, make it us to our music. The man is there again, make it us to our music. 1, 2. Make you no jealousy, people will get you. If it better for you in this one, make you no love with people will not get. Always your cool. Now God will grant everybody as it is. Now God will not want anybody to suffer. You big by nature, why you not be as you be? You small by nature, why you not be as you be? You be handicapped, make you no vex at all. Hey, yeah, who no. Hey, yeah, in this one, so. Hey, yeah, who no. Hey, yeah, in this one, so. Cavemen, I be no be so. Hey, I so happy as a naughty boy. I so happy as a naughty boy in this one. 1, 2.
And it's always reassuring when you see the musicians really grooving to their music. And I could see Benjamin in Lagos in the studio getting down to it, as they say. And of course, Kingsley also tapping his fingers there. So that's a hopeful sign. And I'm delighted to say that I'm joined from our Lagos studios by the so-called new messiahs of Highlife music, the Cavemen, made up of the duo of Kingsley Okorie and Benjamin James. Gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for joining us. And let's just be clear that Kingsley, you're the one wearing the hat or the cap, and Benjamin, you're the one with the dreadlocks, and you play the drums, but both of you do the vocals. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I am a big fan of Highlife music, and I am absolutely elated that you guys are doing what you do. And I think what's amazing is that you're only in your early 20s. I mean, how is it, and I'll start with you, Kingsley, how is it that you've emerged as the new messiahs of Highlife music? What inspired you to move in that direction?
I mean, we grew up listening to Highlife music. You know, our dad, we are brothers, and our father used to play lots of Highlife, you know, and we're surrounded with music, you know, generally, you know, so we listened to Highlife for the major part of our childhood, and yeah, and, you know, went into the contemporary music and all that, but like, recently we just saw that void that nobody was filling, and, you know, and Highlife is such beautiful and indigenous music that needs to be represented globally. So I feel that's where the call came from. That's where the call really came from. Yeah.
Well, I think I agree with you that the music is just absolutely superb. And let me bring Benjamin in, because you guys, Benjamin, have taken what the Guardian newspaper called ancestral sounds and innovated them and infuse them with a contemporary appeal. Is it gaining popular appeal amongst the younger generation, do you think?
I mean, that's like you said, we're trying to, you know, we're doing the Highlife the traditional way, but we're also infusing different genres of music, and that includes jazz, you know, Afro beats, and everything we know. So it's just, yeah, definitely appealing to the younger generation, because they grew up listening to Afro pop or Afro beats, and we're trying to put that together, and, you know.
I mean, and we're young too, so.
So yeah, that's basically
well,
it.
I have to agree that there are, because I've listened to quite a bit of your album Roots, and I noticed that, I mean, I keep waiting for that incredible guitar that really defines Highlife music, and it always comes up somewhere in between. But I can also hear the drums and all the rest of it that gives it a slightly different sheen. Of course, Highlife music itself, Kingsley, began as a sort of unplanned musical experiment in Ghana and Nigeria over 100 years ago. I suppose at that time, the mood and the pace of the country was different. I mean, there was less urgency, more time for relaxation, and less hustle. And that seems to be reflected in the sort of the laid-back rhythms of Highlife music. Now, of course, the pace of life is much more frenetic. Has that made it more difficult to get people to relate to it today?
Yeah, so Highlife, like I said, Highlife is very foundational. Everything, you know, everything that we're listening to today comes from Highlife, you know. So no matter what, you can't deny nature. Highlife, indigenous music is the nature of African people. So there's no way you hear a Highlife record or something that's indigenous to you that you don't stop and be like, oh, wait a minute, this is something I relate to, this is my blood. So like us doing it in this age and time is basically like bringing people back to what was and making people realize that life can be better again. Music, Highlife can come back again, and this time not just locally but globally, you know. So yeah, I mean, in this time it's more reflective and like hopeful, because we're in a state, you know, we're in a very crazy state in this country. So like we're coming to bring that hope again and be like, oh, it can be beautiful again through
music.
Our
I like the use
music,
of the word hope. It infuses the entire thing with a new sort of sheen. Stay with us, guys. We want to talk with you some more. You're watching The Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our exploration of the new urban flavour of West African highlife music from the Cavemen, a Lagos-based Nigerian band that's inspired by vintage highlife music. Stay with us. Welcome back to The Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Anyegolu. Now today we are exploring a new urban, younger flavour of West African highlife music from the Cavemen, a Lagos-based Nigerian youth band that's inspired by vintage highlife music from the 50s and 60s and even beyond. They call it Highlife for a new generation, the sort of relaxing fusion of indigenous rhythms and Western melodies that evokes idyllic images of post-independence Nigeria, with friends and family sitting under palm trees drinking palm wine while highlife music blares from a wireless transistor radio. Well, today we are bringing back those memories with my special guests, the Cavemen. We'll speak with them some more in a moment, but first, here's some more of their definitive 21st century highlife music.
So we're going to make music together. Are we down for that? Chicka, 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 chicka. Ha. So we're going to do like this, like that, like this, like that, yeah, like this, yeah, yeah. So we'll do what the great Fela Anikulapo Kuti called underground spiritual game. So I will say, when I feed the group, I want you guys to say yeah, yeah. Did you get that? When I feed the group, when I feed the group, so at some point, you will sing in this song. The title of this song is Osondo. It's for every hustler, everybody that believes in hustle, and I mean clean hustle. When I feel the groove, 1, 2, ready. Osondo Bina gai jegi ele kwela na zue Osondo 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 Osondo, Osondo, Binaga ijegi elekwela ya nazue. Osondo, 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 Osondo.
And the new messiahs of highlife music, the Cavemen, made up of the duo of Kingsley Okorie and Benjamin James, are still with me from our Lagos studios. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen, for staying with us. And I'll come to you, Benjamin, because I'm rather curious. I'm told that even though a lot of your lyrics, not all of it, but a considerable amount of it is often in Igbo language, you guys are not actually fluent in the language, and yet you sound so convincing. How do you do it?
I feel like when there's a will, there's a way.
That's
So,
basically
like,
it.
it's actually so clear that there was a vision to this, and it was so inspired. And the fact that you can't speak doesn't mean you can't write constructively. So
You can write anything in music these days.
Yeah. So I mean, music is a different phenomenon. Music is spiritual. So it just when the melodies come, you put in the words, and before we know it, it makes sense.
And sometimes we might not even know we might not know what to say, and we just decide to call our mom.
Yeah.
And just make it easier for us. So.
Yeah.
Yes, I just realized that, of course, you guys are in your early 20s, so I suppose calling your mom is not something that's too alien to you at the moment. But let me ask you this. Yeah, I know. I mean, you're not exactly toddlers, but you're not exactly, hugely grown up as well. But then, let me ask you this, Kingsley, because I'm curious to know why you chose the name Cavemen of all the possible names you could have picked. I mean, you don't sort of live in caves in some sort of dire part of Lagos, do you?
No, we don't. We don't.
We stay on the mainland.
We don't live in the cave, but. For me, the Cavemen, that name represents purity, primitiveness, and creativity. So a lot of times as musicians, we tend to be so clouded by validation, as opposed to the right spirit of the music. And for me, that's where primitiveness and purity and creativity comes in, because I mean, if you know what the Cavemen are, like, they could explore with little things, and it kind of really applies to our lives, because how we made this album, we made it in our small room with like little or no equipment, but like we just had the vision, and we were inspired, and we just called our friends, our musician friends, and yeah, we made the album. Yeah, so when I hear that name, the Cavemen, it constantly reminds me of how we should be as individuals and how we should make people feel with our music.
Also, to contribute to that is also, discovering yourself. So technically everybody is a caveman. It's basically searching your heart and, keep just going deeper and deeper and deeper, because in the cave, you don't really know the destination. So just keep going deep, 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 deep like that. So that's basically it.
And Benjamin, that's a very interesting point you make there, because I think what also makes your music additionally interesting and compelling is the fact that you not only use live instrumentation, but you also produce, I understand, pretty much produce the album yourself. Tell us about that.
Yeah. So the way we make music is, it comes very organic. It is always mostly dreams. So just imagine you sleeping and there's a song in your dream, and then you wake up and then your brother is just saying like, Kingsley, I heard this song, or Benjamin, I heard this song, and then we just make the song. So it's as organic and as pure as that. Nothing extra,
Right. Okay. Well, that's an interesting revelation, particularly to someone like myself who is not a musician. Therefore, I don't wake up with dreams of music playing in my head. But it's always fascinating to see real artists like yourselves and how it comes to you. I mean, it's an inspiration, and that's why people like us are so fascinated by the work that you guys do. So Kingsley, how did you guys actually come together to form the Cavemen? I mean, you've told us that you're brothers, so obviously you grew up in the same roof, but I understand that you studied law, Kingsley, which is rather a far cry from being a musician, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not so much of a far cry now, because I mean, they say something that no knowledge is lost. So, I mean, the hard work that was really done then kind of really gives me that discipline now, So, how we came up with the group, how we started the band. I was in law school in Kano, Bagauda, and I got the name the Cavemen, you know, because I felt like I was in the cave in Kano where I was. You know, I felt like I was out of like civilization and whatnot. So yeah, then I got creative there, came back for externship, and I shared the idea with my brother. Like, hey, why don't we form a band called the Cavemen? And I mean, my brother was definitely down for that. Then we called our friends, Fini, Shegun, yeah, and like just a couple of musicians started playing music, and then it wasn't even Highlife. We were just playing, we were just experimenting. Then I mean, that's how we just started playing. Then we became a backup band. We became backup band for like a lot of artists. With that process, we're kind of getting stronger, you know, as a group.
And learning.
Yeah. Yeah. When we decided to play our own music, it was just yeah. Just
Right,
like
and I just want to, I mean, obviously you were telling us your personal experience. I'm not sure the people from Kano would want to be referred to as, you know, coming from a cave or being lost to civilization, but clearly you are, of course, entitled to your own personal experience, which is totally understandable. But let me come to you, Benjamin.
the cave is relative.
You studied art and music, so for you, a sort of natural progression, I suppose, segueing into being a musician, clearly something that you are comfortable with. And I mean, you play the drums. I don't know if you play any other instruments.
No, I play the drums for a living. And I sing.
Right, okay, yes, I've heard you hitting some pretty high notes there. But as your brother was saying, I mean, you were clearly enthused by the idea of forming a band. How long has the band actually been in existence?
The duo, the band, or the duo has been like 2 years.
Yeah,
2 years. 3
years.
3 years now.
We started mainly in 2018.
Yeah, 2017 ending. It was in Abuja that we really started. So.
Well, that's very interesting, because I mean, in 2 years you've done quite a lot. I mean, you've won some major awards.
Yeah.
I'll get to talk about those awards a bit later in the program. But what I find fascinating, Kingsley, about Highlife music in general and your reworking of it in particular is the fact that it is at once simple but also complex. Simple in the sense that it is soothing and you sort of relax to it and tap your feet to it and that sort of thing, but complex in the sense that there are so many layers to it, and each time you listen, you discover something new. I mean, a bit like classical music. I mean, something that I'm fascinated with, classical music, but you know, equally the same with Highlife.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you're definitely allowed to be fascinated with. I mean, when it comes to Highlife, because like Highlife is indigenous, and like a lot of people underrate Highlife, which is not supposed to be so. Highlife is the foundation of any music that comes from Africa or from West Africa. You know, Afrobeats, Afropop. You know, everything what we're doing now. You know. So yeah, you know, we just really, you know, took that and like just figured that out. So, you know, listen to different music from Africa and just kind of brought that fusion. Yeah. So like for us, the major thing really is making Highlife embracing and not exclusive. So we're bringing other cultures.
Yeah, globally.
Yeah.
And it's funny because we are also, the way everybody else is fascinated by this is actually the same way. Like we feel fascinated about it's just amazing. Like we love what we do, we know it's great, and we keep making it.
Well, I have to say that I love what you do. I think it's absolutely brilliant. I mean, I am an enormous fan of Highlife music, and indeed all kinds of Nigerian music. So every time there is a new sort of flavour, a new sort of, direction. I am very, very interested in it. Stay with us, guys. You're watching The Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our exploration of the new urban flavour of West African highlife music from the Cavemen, a Lagos-based Nigerian band that's inspired by vintage highlife music. Stay with us.
2, 3. Woo.
Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Anyekolu. Now, my music guests today are the duo of Kingsley Okorie and Benjamin James, collectively known as the Cavemen. They are the so-called new messiahs of highlife music, which is, of course, an art form that dates back 100 years. Highlife music came into existence when the electric instruments came along, merging with the horn section of marching bands. This, in turn, led to the evolution of West African indigenous music, and they all blended into the rhythmic structures that became highlife. So highlife is, in effect, dance music driven by the beat of the drum, but it's also rhythmically quite complex, as you will hear from this brilliant production by the Cavemen. Take a listen.
Obiageri bamba, Obiageri bamba, Obiageri bamba, Obiageri bamba. Chegou.
Absolutely superb stuff. And the new purveyors of highlife music, the Cavemen, Kingsley Okorie and Benjamin James, are still with me from our Lagos studios. Thank you guys for staying with us. And Benjamin, I noticed a bit of jazz scatting there from you using your voice. And also, of course, that guitar from Segun, which is clearly a sort of blues guitar that you've used to kind of evolve highlife to another level. That's why this contemporary version is just so exciting. And I expect, Benjamin, that your audience is made up of both young and not so young people. So a fan base that presumably crosses age barriers.
Yes. It's so surprising to us because, performing for the first time as the Cavemen, we performed in front of 20s, 18 to 29 maybe. And then we've played in front of the 60s and the 50s at Otis Place. And it was the same energy, the same move. Everybody it's amazing. We're breaking barriers here with the age thing, and it's working pretty nicely.
Well, I mean, you certainly hit the right note because, I mean, highlife is something that goes back many years. So clearly, people who are much older than you are were listening to it, and then you're bringing younger people into it as well. So that gives you a very big audience indeed. And let me bring Kingsley in because I mentioned previously before we went on break, Kingsley, that you guys have been winning awards. I'm reading here that you won the Best Alternative Album Award at the Headies, beating out the likes of the international jazz artist Asha. That's something to crow about, isn't it?
Yeah, it's quite celebratory, but we definitely respect everybody that was in that category. Brimo, Asha, Bez, DRB Lasgidi, come on, like, you know, we grew up listening to the first three, you know, so it was, for us, it was very humbling, you know, and it was a sign for many other things to come.
Right. Well, I mean, congratulations on winning that, and presumably, or hopefully for you, lots more to come. But Benjamin, tell us about the Highlife musicians you guys grew up actually listening to. Because, I mean, your brother Kingsley mentioned that you grew up, you know, your parents played a lot of Highlife and that sort of thing. But were there some of them that were great influences on you that you know, listened more to and sort of enjoyed listening to?
Of course. So it's like a, what do you call it? A list. So it's my mom, or our mom, our dad, and our driver. So from our dad's side is Oriental Brothers, Osadebe. From our mom's side, it's the gospel side, which is Choma Jesus, Gozie Okeke, and the likes. And then from the driver's side, it was Oliver the Kokwe. So imagine children taking all this at once. So that's what we grew up listening to. And for a long time, for the longest time.
Sounds fascinating. I know all those musicians, not the Grace one, but the other ones, and I find them just their music extraordinary. But Kingsley, what are you guys actually working on at the moment? I understand you've got like several albums already written and produced and just waiting to be released.
Yes, we've got the second album coming out soon. We're very excited for that because it's another, you know, journey into Highlife fusion, and this is gonna be a very versatile album. And we got a couple of visuals, we got a couple of shows coming up. Yeah, I mean, we just keep moving. Cavemen, we move. We stay KV. Yeah, that's how, you know, there's a lot coming, you know, stuff that we know, stuff that we don't know, stuff that we can tell, stuff that we can't tell. Just know that there's a lot of excitement and, you know, Highlife coming your way.
Okay, well, since you won't tell, let's switch to your brother and see if he will tell. Benjamin, what can we expect? What can we expect in this new album? I mean, much more Highlife music, fusion, or are you going to branch away from that?
So, Charles, I think you already know that I'm the teller here, so I'll tell. So there are a couple of good great collaborations on this one. We're working with, I'll just give you one name, Cobams, on this album, and the rest you get to find out when you hear the album.
Okay, well, at least you gave us a slight hint, a tease, and we appreciate that. And Kingsley, yes. We've got a couple minutes before we sadly have to end the chat, but what do you most want people to know about the Cavemen that perhaps they don't know already?
Well, we're passionate. I mean, you might know this, but like we're passionate about what we do. We're definitely focused to getting Highlife and Highlife fusion to that global front. I mean, we love the KV people, and you know we definitely will continue to preach the message that indigenous music and African music, you know, is going to be the next thing. You know, it already is, you know, thanks to our, you know, superstars and, you know, African musicians representing us all over the world. You know, yeah, I mean, we're just passionate about what we do, and, you know, there's gonna be a lot coming, you know, soon from here, from the
Well,
cave.
keep doing what you're doing, guys. We appreciate the time that you've taken to talk to us, and I have to say that Highlife music is very satisfying, particularly your version of it, and I hope more people get to experience what you're doing. That's the Cavemen, the new purveyors of Highlife music, Kingsley Okorie and Benjamin James, talking to me from our studios in Lagos. That's it for this edition of the Arise interview. Join us again tomorrow from me and the entire team here in Abuja and Lagos. Bye-bye, and thank you for watching.